Cypress, the Counterintelligence podcast, hosted by IXN Solutions, the company you turn to for corporate counterintelligence expertise and creators of 351X.
Ryan, Rambo, we're live. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy Clark. How are you doing today, sir?
It's Saturday. We're going to talk about something that I'm rather passionate about. I've already done the honey-do list, so I'm excited about what we're going to chat about. How are you doing?
I'm worn out. I'll tell you, my honey-do list today involved all outside work, putting in the spring garden, raking and burning leaves. I'm telling you, I'm exhausted. So it's been a while. I guess I got lazy over the winter and out of shape, and just that few hours of work today, I was like, okay, I'm done.
You know what? We planted a garden last year, right? And I think we spent, I don't know, a couple $100 on getting everything, a raised flower bed, the dirt, took the time to plant, to care. It was not worth it at all. We should have just went to the store. Our reap was awful. I hope you have better luck.
We won't. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, we won't. And we'll be buying all of our groceries and fresh vegetables from the grocery store as well. But, it makes us feel better. At least we're trying.
Truth. Well done. Well, good luck. I hope you have a prosperous garden this year, brother.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I've got calluses. That's probably the best thing that I'll get out of it.
Well, you made your wife happy.
That's very true.
That's good.
She's happy, and she's still actually out there while we're doing podcasts. She's still working. I was like, okay,
so to our audience, this is probably going to be a 5-hour podcast.
Right. Buckle up. It's going to be fine. But Jerry, what are we going to talk about today? We got a really interesting topic. I think we've touched on it in the past, but I think we probably can go a little bit deeper. And so what do we have?
Yeah, so I think we did hit upon it a couple episodes ago. But I look back early in my career, and I'm in the 82nd Airborne, jumping out of airplanes, brand new to the CI field. And everybody was constantly yelling, CI HUMINT, like it's one word. Tactical HUMINT team, you both talk to people. Ryan, I'm excited about this conversation because there is a delineation between counterintelligence and human intelligence. And oftentimes the lines are blurred, but I don't understand why. I think it all ties back to us not properly explaining what we do in our profession, and then our leaders not understanding the difference between the two, which again, I would take and point back to myself. We did a poor job of explaining our craft to the leaders out there.
Yeah, I agree. So same experience. I came out of the CI Special Agents course. I got a chance to see my badge and credentials, and then it went back to Fort Huachuca, and I didn't see them for 2 years. I went straight from there to Joint Base Lewis McChord, which at the time was Fort Lewis, and I was in Charlie Troop 114th Cav of a Stryker Brigade, and my title was Embedded Humenter with a Cav Troop. And I was like, I'm not a HUMINT guy, but because we talk to people, they just lump us together. Two totally different disciplines. And we're going to explore that today. And we're going to, by the way, I'll just add, I mentor a lot of young counterintelligence agents in the field in the Army right now. And they all come back and tell me that they're in the CI HUMINT platoon. And I'm just like, no, but
soul crushed.
Exactly. Break away.
That's right.
Still alive and well today, even 25 years later, after all of the lessons that we've learned, they're still lumping us together. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to say our piece and talk about the significant differences, because they are significant, between counterintelligence and human intelligence.
Yeah, agreed. And Ryan, I think we should keep this very basic. There's a lot we can talk about, but if we keep it at like a 101 level, just for our audience out there, I think that's a good start. And then if our audience, of course, disagrees or has more to add, please reach out and let's get you on board and talk about that. I know plenty of HUMINTers out there. I would love to get somebody on board and, chat about your profession. And then we can talk about how maybe we worked together or how we duped you over if you're the adversary on the other side to being a counterintelligence professional. Anyways, Ryan, where do you want to start?
Well, I think we may want to start of just defining kind of the terms, and then what are the core objectives of each, the purpose And then I think that's a good place to start, because we had a really good conversation with Tim Schnur the other day. And he said, guys, I really still don't know what you're talking about. And that's good. That's great
Yeah.
feedback. He's not an Intel guy, he's a cybersecurity guy. And so defining the terms might be a good place, and then the purpose and objective of each discipline. How's that?
I think it's great. And for our audience out there, thank you, Tim, for that feedback. That was fantastic. We live, breathe this every day. And oftentimes we probably need to take a step back and say, you know what, let's better explain how that applies outside of our particular profession and skill set. So if anybody in our audience has questions, please reach out at any time. Yeah, I love it, Ryan. Let's start with the definition of each.
Yeah.
Counterintelligence and human intelligence.
So counterintelligence. I'm going to give it a stab, and I want you to correct me where I'm wrong, because I'm going to pull this out of my hip pocket. So counterintelligence is an intelligence discipline that is designed to identify, assess, neutralize, and explore or exploit the foreign intelligence entities, international terrorist organizations, or the insider threat. We are all about stopping intel collection from happening against whoever we're designing or whoever we're appointed to protect. Did I come close?
Boom. Nailed it.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add until we get to the purpose. What do you have for human?
All right. So for human involves the gathering of intelligence directly from human sources, like informants or agents, to inform decision making. So it is an active intel collection platform talking solely based at humans. So it's weird. It's weird how that worked out, that whole human intelligence piece, but that's their point. That positive collection, going out and gathering information. How do you like that for a definition?
I like that as well, Ryan. And when I think human, very human centric, I mean, it's human intelligence, so very human centric. And counterintelligence, I believe in your definition, you expanded not just upon like the human domain, but there's other counter intelligence activities that need to take place. Like I think counter imagery intelligence, counter signal intelligence. In counterintelligence, we are not just focused on the human element in the human domain. It opens up to a much wider aperture of all the intelligence disciplines out there.
And I agree with you. So I see the CI HUMINT thing, and I also think, okay, well, we could be CI MASINT, we could be CI IMINT, we could be CI Cyber, we could be all of these different collection platforms that we have, the adversary has as well. So, I mean, it's just as likely that we could be paired with each one of those as we could CI HUMINT.
Yeah, spot on. When I think counterintelligence, it's countering an adversarial intelligence discipline. And the discipline could be X, Y, Z, the human domain, the cyber domain, the signal domain, the imagery domain. Counterintelligence does all that, or we should anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And so we have a relationship with each one of these positive intelligence collection platforms, but I also think that HUMINT has a relationship with each one of these positive collection platforms. And it may be more natural and more beneficial since they're both collection platforms. And I've always said that I think probably the most natural relationship instead of CI HUMINT should be HUMINT SIGINT.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love it. It's funny. We were tied together when I was deployed with the SIGINT folks for counterintelligence. And I'm like, well, I think you're better postured to be on the human side. There is a place for confirmation or kind of taking a look at what people are doing to see if there's an intelligence, I guess, gathering activity inside the wire, which we'll get to here in a minute. Yeah, I believe like HUMINT would be better postured to be with SIGINT. I do think that there's a place for CI with HUMINT, though. And I will say, I think that place is as a referent. As human individuals that are out there, collectors, are collecting the information, the counterintelligence responsibility on that is to make sure that it's not a double, if you will, or somebody that's not really doing what they're supposed to and just collecting money. So a fabricator or something along those lines.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's definitely applications for CI in each one of the disciplines, because we need to be able to go through and make sure that the information that we're getting is not false in some way. and that we're being duped. And so by taking that, looking at, collected information through a counterintelligence lens, changes the way, potentially that we look at the information. And we also need that on the counterintelligence side. I mean, counterintelligence professionals conduct liaison, and we have to take a close look at our liaison program to make sure that we're getting the information that actually is relevant to us and not just information that makes us go away. So we could do counterintelligence.
That's right. Yes,
So,
I love it. I would love to talk about that, but if anybody wants to do that, we're going to need to go talk probably somewhere a little bit more secure.
Probably so. But
You know,
in the corporate environment, I would say the natural relationship, though, for counterintelligence professionals is with the cybersecurity team, because that's what we do from a defensive counterintelligence standpoint. So if we're talking about relationships, I know we've talked about the intelligence disciplines, but in the corporate environment, I think the natural relationship is CI cybersecurity.
that makes sense to me, right? You're going to be able to see who's VPNing in, maybe from a foreign location, or trying to rip information off 2 weeks before they leave the company. They're probably reflective to take a look at that. Ryan, so we covered a pretty good definition. Well done. Virtual high five.
Yeah, there you go, man. We did it. We set the stage.
That's right. When I think about the purpose of the differences between HUMINT and CI, HUMINT to me is very outward facing. They're trying to understand what the adversary is doing. So I believe that their focus is collecting on priority intelligence requirements. What they do, they have commanders put these out, units put these out, organizations put these out, say, we need to find out about X. That HUMINT collector goes out and tries to fulfill that requirement. Very outward facing. They're engaging the adversary. They're out there. They're shaking trees. They're meeting people. They're talking to them. They're walking them down this line to traitorism, because that's what it is. We'll get to that in a minute, or espionage on a HUMINT side. But really, priority intelligence requirement focused. If they don't have a PIR, priority intelligence requirement, there's really no obligation to collect, because now you're just collecting to collect, and that rarely works.
You're right. I mean, and the commander has gaps of information. Business leaders have gaps in their information and understanding of their space. And so by talking to people, which again is extremely important. I mean, you can collect a lot of information through cyber or signals and that sort of thing, but humans provide context. Humans can provide history, like, hey, we went this direction versus that direction for a technology because we tried the other way and it didn't work, and so we had to shift gears and go there. So gathering that gathering that information from a human is completely beneficial, and a lot of times leads to answering those priority intelligence reports. Now, our requirements. Now, I've seen it where new information has emerged, which can, when presented to commanders, could kick off a new PIR. But mainly that's very rare type scenario, I think.
I think it's incumbent upon the senior HUMINT collectors out there to work with the commanders, saying, hey, you have a gap here, and here's what we can do. So going back to selling the why you're doing what you're doing, the commanders probably don't know exactly what HUMINT does, but just like we do in the counterintelligence realm is selling why are we doing what we're doing, I think the HUMINT should be the same application. If there's no requirement, probably as a HUMINT individual collector, come up with one to say, here's how I can help you meet your intelligence requirements, or here's a gap, right? So, when I look at counterintelligence on the other side of the coin, though, Ryan, so the purpose of counterintelligence to me is identifying, exploiting, and neutralizing. Oh, there's that word, IXN.
Crazy how that works out.
Yeah, I know, right? Identify, exploit, and neutralize. And it's very inward facing. HUMINT is very outward. Let me go engage the adversary outside the wire. Counterintelligence is the opposite. Who is already inside the wire, or who is trying to infiltrate the wire to get into our planning cycle? That I think that's really kind of the big differences, the purposes between counterintelligence and human intelligence.
And I think we also try to understand what the adversaries collection requirements are. And when we identify those, it helps us better identify what information and which individuals and which technologies touch that information, and where we have to start our counterintelligence efforts, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that does
Yeah.
100% make sense. And it helps you refine what do they know, and if they know something, how do they know that? Is there a leak inside our wire that gave that information away? Absolutely. By, human case officers out there, collectors out there gathering information. And if there's gaps, are those gaps because the adversary already knows, or they just clearly are blind and left in the dark?
Yeah. It's
Ryan, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead. I was just thinking it's incredible the difference that the way that we look at things, which speaks again to the reason why counterintelligence and human probably shouldn't be lumped into together.
Yeah, no doubt. Outward facing humans, inward facing CI. I mean, it's very easy, and at the simplistic level, I think commanders will probably understand what that means. Ryan, as we understand human goes and collects outside the wire, counterintelligence collects on the inside. I just want to touch upon the method and see if I'm close here.
Okay.
So, as a human collector, I mean, they're just that. They go collect and gather information in a very offensive, more or less in general, offensive type of means. They're out there, they're engaging people that may be involved in the other services intelligence discipline. The corporate side, it could be somebody else's company, but it's a offensive means to get out and just meet people. And as John DeSella would say, smell the coffee off their breath. I think humans is very go collect and gather, get out there.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, they can't do their job from behind the desk. They must go to the places where adversaries are located at and engage.
That's right. Yeah, they need to get out there, right? It's outside the wire. When I was in Afghanistan, that's all we did was straight outside the wire. We were doing straight human. I don't know what CI we were doing. I can tell you it was zero, but it was still fun. We were going to the detention facility, talking to detainees. Yeah, I don't. Great job. It was fun, but where's the CI application to that? There was very little. But I digress. I think the method for human, again, go collect and gather, get out there, engage the individuals involved in whatever the PIR tells you to collect against. Now, conversely, the method for counterintelligence, and I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago, the 5 functions of counterintelligence. I think we both decided there should be a couple more than that. But counterintelligence is done just through that, the 5 different functions, maybe 7 different functions out there.
Yeah.
I would submit you can't sit behind a desk to do that either. There's a quote, and I love this quote from Paul Bryant. He was the Alabama, Texas A&M football coach, and this has been a repeated theme through football. You've probably heard it as well. Offense wins games, but defense wins championships. And I think about counterintelligence, although it's more defensive comparatively than humans, which is more offensively, you can't collect or you can't conduct counterintelligence activities by sitting behind your desk. You have to be proactive out there. So proactively doing a covering agent program, which I thought was a fun episode outside the campfire a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
CAP program. Yeah. It starts there. Proactively get out there and make it happen. So that's how, Brian, I would say, I want to pass it over to you to kind of expand or correct.
No, I agree. And I've run defensive counterintelligence platforms in 3 different countries and corporations. And I used to hate whenever I'd hear counterintelligence agents say, I'm bored, or all I'm going to get to do this week is CAP and TARP. It would drive me nuts. I was like, God, that is the greatest thing that we could possibly do. That's where we go out and meet our customer and engage with them and let them tell us what their concerns are, so that we have a jumping off point to where we can go and solve those challenges for them. And it also gives us great insight into some of the information that they're trying to protect, some of the operations that they're trying to protect, the personnel. I mean, and then it just, over time, it just continues to grow and expand and become such a wonderful counterintelligence operational type relationship.
Yeah, if you're bored in counterintelligence, you're not in the right craft. Probably need to find a different job. There's no opportunity to be bored. Covering agent work, that can be done anytime. Go out and just say hi to people. Go out and talk to individuals in the units that you're covering or the organization that you're a part of, just to get to meet people and see what they say. I just don't understand
Well,
either when people say that, Ryan.
and you don't have to layer on the security, right? I mean, you don't have to. There's no hiding the fact that you're a counterintelligence professional. You're out there doing your job. You have a set of badge and credentials, and you get an opportunity to engage. In a corporate environment, now you don't have the badge and credentials, but I mean, you still have the authority based on the position to go out and have these same conversations, and it's mutually beneficial in a lot of respects. Now, HUMINT on the other side, they don't have that freedom of movement. It's a little bit more restrictive. And what do you think about that? Do you think the HUMINT guys have the same leeway and freedom of movement that a counterintelligence professional may have?
I do not. I think that probably when they're in parallel is when, inside the Department of Defense at least, is when you're downrange or in an environment that's rather permissive. But I would stay stateside. Our poor HUMINT brethren, if they're in a force comm type of unit within DoD, boy, I hope you like range duty. I hope you like painting rocks or marching. Our poor HUMINT brethren out there. There's only so many schools you can go to, and I mean the same with CI in a force comm type of unit. But boy, I'd be raising my hand to be deployed all the time,
For
so I
sure.
could execute the craft.
Yeah, for sure. Well, whenever I think of HUMINT outside the wire, you really have to be. You can't have your business card on you that claims, "Hey, I'm Ryan Rambo, HUMINT officer. Would you like to have a cup of coffee with me?" Where, from a counterintelligence standpoint, if I'm doing CAP or TARP or liaison, I can put my counterintelligence badge on my waistband and walk around all day long and invite people to coffees, and they are enjoying to have a conversation with me. But yeah, it's just a little bit trickier for a HUMINT professional.
Man, Ryan, that's a great segue to talk about maybe tradecraft next.
Yeah,
Well done.
I was leading you to that direction.
Well, yeah, hook, line, sinker. I'm in.
I love it.
you know, Tradecraft. I would love to just kind of have an episode about tradecraft and what it is, because I believe it's everything that a collector or a counterintelligence agent does. I mean, it's all the way up from the first engagements, all the way up to, I mean, everybody. If you haven't seen the movie, what is it, Spy Game, um, with Robert Redford, he puts his. I think they say a quote in there. I'm not going to teach you tradecraft. I'm going to teach you spycraft or whatever it is. Maybe it was The Recruit. I might get getting movies mixed up, but it's really everything that's being done and how you obtain information from an individual all the way to walking a particular route to see if you're being surveilled. But when I think about human intelligence, again, this for our audience this is very basic 101 type of level stuff. But for human intelligence, why they employ tradecraft is going to be to protect themselves. They're protecting themselves. So when they meet an individual in another country or another, I don't know, corporate entity, that other entity or country doesn't see them meeting with that individual. So that collector from the human side needs to protect his affiliation with that individual that he's meeting on the other side, whether it's a source, whether it's an asset. Because if you bump those two together and you put the asset in place with the collector at the same time, that's when CI can kind of take a look at, we know that guy's a human collector. It looks like he just met somebody. And that's where I think that overlap is with CI and HUMINT, very distinct. But there's a bleed that CI can kind of take a look at. So when I think about tradecraft, it's the methods or means to protect the intelligence professional, that would be the collector, and the operation that they're kind of executing.
Well, and I think it also goes into protecting the source as well. And so, yeah, again, if we're going back to counterintelligence, if somebody sees me on the street having a conversation during CAP or a TARP type relationship, or in a corporate environment, I'm meeting with the HR director or legal director or any of my peers, people are thinking, okay, well, that's a normal relationship. But if I'm a HUMINT collector and I'm meeting with somebody on the street, well, now we have a totally different scenario. Now it's nefarious. And so I think by employing tradecraft, by employing OPSEC, we're both protecting the human collector and the source, which I think is a huge deal. Because if every time our human collectors go out to talk to somebody and they get rolled up by law enforcement or hostile counterintelligence forces, nobody will ever come and talk to us again.
That's right. That's a fair point, Ryan. When I think about human intelligence collectors out there, they often engage because they're going outside of the wire. Individuals that aren't affiliated with a company, or in this case, we're talking a lot about the government, the U.S. Department of Defense or the U.S. government. It's a foreign individual, foreign to that company or that entity that you're a part of. And that's what you're trying to protect, is that the case officer in a human case and that foreigner's relationship with that collector. Conversely, I think about counterintelligence and why they use tradecraft. It's to defeat the collector, it's to defeat that human individual. So to put it in perspective, if you think about a surveillance route, like where somebody's following somebody else, and the human collector is out there, surveillance on the human collector would oftentimes be employed by the counterintelligence region to find out where that human collector is going. Conversely, I would say what the human individual is doing when the counterintelligence is following them, they want to employ what's called counter surveillance. They want to understand, am I being followed? So to put it in a surveillance type of aspect, the counterintelligence will oftentimes follow the human intelligence collector to find out who that they're meeting. So to see if they find somebody inside the wire that's providing that human collector information. What the human collector is doing is the counter surveillance to make sure they're not being followed before they meet the adversary. Oh my God, I've gone cross-eyed.
It's a very complicated web. But here's the great thing about it from a counterintelligence standpoint. And that's whether it's in government or it's in corporate. Let's just say a human intelligence collector operating inside a corporate environment or an insider threat into government. If we see them employing tradecraft, that's a dead giveaway. At that point, we know that one, either they've been trained, to do certain things to hide what they're doing, or two, they're trying to obfuscate some of the activities that they're doing. So it's usually it's a tip off. We know that something bad has happened when we come across that, regardless of where it's at within the normal operation. So yeah, it's very important to understand how tradecraft plays on both sides of the CI and HUMINT domain.
Right. Yeah, I think it's pretty wild to understand the two differences. It sucks that we're grouped together, and it's because we can't explain it very well. That's probably how it happened in the 90s, but they're again very distinct.
Yeah,
Ryan,
extremely distinct.
What do you think about the success? What does the success look like in a HUMINT operation?
It's all about collecting the information to meet the intelligence requirement. Whatever that intelligence requirement is, if you tell me to go and collect information on a pencil, and I find the right person that has placement and access to that pencil, and they provide me all of the details of what the pencil looks like, how it's manufactured, and they bring me the pencil, I just won. So to me, that's the whole goal of human intelligence.
Well, you brought up two interesting points I want to dig into. I think
Okay.
you're right, though. If they're not collecting and they're not publishing to meet those priority intelligence requirements, you are a human collector no more. To use Scott Sparks' term, publish or perish. Either you're producing reports or you're not going to be a human collector very long, because you need to produce, publish or perish. Ryan, you brought up a pretty interesting topic. Placement and access. Ooh,
Oh boy.
what does that mean?
So that's what we always look for as intelligence professionals. And I think there's applicability to both the counterintelligence side and the human side. Two different perspectives, two different windows. Human intelligence collectors are looking for an adversary or a person that's foreign to the organization who has placement and access to information that meets an intelligence collection requirement. And so they're looking for that person on the other side that has, like I said, I brought up the pencil kind of example, but they have access to the pencil, and it's normal. They don't have to go and fight to get that access. They don't have to expand their access. They're in contact with it all day long, and they have the pencil. And so we're looking at, from a human intelligence standpoint, that's the kind of person that we're looking for, who has that natural placement and access. Now, from a defensive standpoint, if we're looking to protect a certain piece of technology, we're also looking for those people who have natural placement and access to that technology, because they're vulnerable to human intelligence approach or cyber approach or that sort of thing. So it's our obligation to make sure that they're aware of the risk and threat, and then train them properly, so that if they do come into contact with somebody that's interested in it, because we know the tricks of the trade from the human intelligence side. And so we can train them to say, this is what it looks like. This is how it's going to unfold. And if you ever see this thing, this is how we want you to, one, recognize it, react to it properly, and then report it back to us as soon as you possibly can. I call it R3.
R3.
Just throwing it out.
What is it, R3?
Recognize. Recognize that something weird is happening, that I've been somebody told me about this. I'm recognizing now what this looks like. I recognize that I'm up against a threat or a risk. And then I wanted to react to it properly. I don't want to throw my hand up and say, oh, I can't talk to you about that, because now we have no investigative or operational potential whatsoever. So we want you to remain non-committal. It's like, oh, you're interested in that. Well, I don't have, immediate information on that, but, maybe next week I will. Can I call you whenever I do? Can I get your phone number? We want you to react to it properly. And then we want you to report it. Report it back to security professionals who know what that looks like, understand it, preferably counterintelligence professionals, so that we could take steps to mitigate those different threats and risks. So R3, it's pretty easy.
I love it. One more time. What are the R's for?
Recognize, react, report.
I love that, Ryan. I'm going to follow up that in a minute. I had to jot a note down. Placement and access. Can I use your analogy of the pencil factory?
Oh, please do. God, the pencil is so important these days.
I know. Tell me about it.
AI.
I know, right? Maybe it's an auto pen. Too soon.
Too soon. Love it.
We might need to cut that out.
I say keep it in. It's worth it.
All right. So when I think about placement and access, I want to expand upon your pencil analogy. I through my career, people didn't really, to me, understand the individuals I was mentoring, the leadership I was with. The term would blend together, placement and access. They're two distinctly different terms. So going back to your pencil analogy real quick. So I don't know, name a pencil company.
Oh my gosh, dude. I can't even remember.
Skillcraft. How about Skillcraft?
Skillcraft.
Yellow. Yeah. I don't know if it's a pencil. I think it is a pencil. I can't remember. I haven't used a pencil in years, but Skillcraft. Maybe within Skillcraft, they have a certain eraser or lead that involves a very specific composition, which makes them unique. And that's what makes their product sell. This is why it writes better. This is why it lasts longer. Maybe it stays sharper, or the eraser actually erases and doesn't knock off the pencil the first time you use it, or doesn't leave smear marks. But I would say in our particular example, Skillcraft has a pencil that their composition of, let's just say, their eraser is very specific to that organization. So first of all, for this company, if this is accurate and you don't have a counterintelligence program on protecting that particular proprietary information, reach out, we'll help you out. But for our fictional example, as a human collector, do you think he's just going to go bombard Skillcraft? I'm just going to go meet everybody at Skillcraft. You're shaking your head no. But an individual that works at Skillcraft would have placement. They work at that facility. But that's the janitorial crew. That could be the secretary crew. That could be the line crew, or it could be the scientist that works in that particular eraser that knows the composition of that. Just because an individual works at an organization, they have placement to a particular place, doesn't necessarily mean they have access to that information. And that's what's distinctive. I think in a HUMINT collector, what they're focused on in that intelligence requirement, go get the composition of that eraser. So what they're going to do, they'll look at skillcraft. They found their hill. Now, who would know that? It's the scientists, it's the engineers. They've refined that scope into a workable, manageable means, and that's the access that they're after. I think that's what separates placement and access, or defines placements and access.
I think that's a wonderful description, and really nails it, to be honest with you, because we always talk about placement and access. We actually call it P&A a lot of times, just for kind of our lingo term, so we can go secure whenever we're talking around a group of people that don't have any idea what we're talking about. But but it's very important to know both different aspects of placement and access.
That's right. Again, I think placement is just a physical position. Do they work in that particular organization? The access, do they have the ability to extract that particular piece of information? In this case, do they have the plans to the eraser, the composition of the eraser? But yeah, I think that's the distinct difference. And in humans, going back to the success, if the PIRs is we want the composition of that eraser, and the HUMINT collector can't publish here how he's getting it or how he's moving towards it, so long C wouldn't want to be a publish or perish.
Yeah. So let's talk about your definition of placement and access from a counterintelligence perspective. You nailed the HUMINT side, but what about placement and access from counterintelligence? Because we use the same term.
We do. Yeah, placement and access. And, I think about like a defensive source operation. Let's talk about that. We want to make sure that our engineers, or the individuals that are working the composition of that particular eraser, are protected. So you may have a defensive source operation that sits next to the engineer that is kind of keeping an eye on what's happening. Is this individual, and we're going to get into undue affluence and CI indicators, but in counterintelligence, we know we want to protect that eraser. We want to protect the composition. So in counterintelligence, we may put sensors or individuals in place to make sure people aren't doing shady things. How's that?
I love it. I think you nailed it again. So very well done. I love it. Conversations about P&A are extremely important from both sides, both perspectives, but for totally different reasons. And understanding that, I think, is critically important. Now, you mentioned something that I thought was my bailiwick. I love it. I love talking about it. And you're talking about indicators of espionage.
Yeah.
So once we have identified people from the counterintelligence perspective, now we're looking, maybe the next stage would be indicators of espionage.
That's right.
What does that?
Love it.
What does that mean, Jeremy? You're blowing my mind. I mean, you're making counterintelligence so easy.
Well, boy, I hope so. So it kind of ties to the success of counterintelligence to me, and the success of a counterintelligence to protect things before they get stolen. Now, when an investigation happens and we uncover a real spy, good win, but it kind of hurts my soul. How do we get to that point? How did the information already get ripped off? So identifying, exploiting, neutralizing threats, defeating that foreign HUMINT collector or that HUMINT gatherer to protect the information. And Ryan, it's all about kind of explaining the anomalies. And the anomalies within counterintelligence, I think there's a couple. I'll just rattle them off if you don't mind.
Okay.
Excessive wealth. Why is a private driving a Lamborghini? Why is a lieutenant driving a Jaguar? There may be explanation. Any one of these indicators would just make me scratch my head a little bit if they start to compound. But I would say excessive wealth. How are they able to live the lifestyle just based on the pay that they're getting? And there are a whole bunch of things that can happen outside of that. How's that for one?
I love that first one.
Yeah, it's disproportionate, right? So again, that private, maybe he's just comes from a wealthy family, and the simple question would be, hey, private, how are you able to afford a Lamborghini? Well, it's an inheritance. My uncle, my family, somebody relative left a bunch of money behind, or it's their car, or rented it, borrowed it. That's an easy explanation. The same for a lieutenant.
Are you saying that people commit espionage for money?
Ooh, motivations, they do. I would ask the follow-up question, what is it about money that they're trying to get done, though? I think we should get into the money ideology, coercion, and ego here in a minute, MICE for short.
Yes.
But yeah, money, right? Undue affluence is called. Why are they? It seems to be that their lifestyle is disproportionate with their income, position, or grade to me. It's a red flag for counterintelligence. So we know what is the number one motivation oftentimes the human gatherer collector uses, Ryan?
Money. People
Boom.
have committed espionage for money dating back to biblical times. As a matter of fact, as far back as history,
right.
part one,
That's right.
they've committed espionage for money.
The Babylon times. Here's some coins. Go steal this information. Well, it's an indicator. Now he's at the bar and he's got all this booze and food. And you're usually begging and panhandling on the corner. What the heck is happening here? Good question to follow up. How did you come into this money? Committed espionage. All right. Well, you're under arrest.
Right.
Ryan, so I would say what's that?
That's not the only one. That's not the only one, right? That's not the only indicator.
There's a whole list. So another one, I show up to work early and leave late all the time. I think you do as well. We're very passionate about what we do. But if it happens all of a sudden, and all of a sudden this individual who's kind of a slacker, or maybe they work real hard, but their hours all of a sudden change. So they start showing up early, they start leaving late. That in of itself could be okay and explained away. But if you compound other things, arriving early before other people get there, what are you doing? You're trying to steal stuff, rip it off, or staying late after people leave the office. That could be an indicator.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that we noticed, I've seen this before in the corporate environment, are these individuals where everybody was working, say, 7:30 to 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, but there would always be this, one guy that was working until 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. And what we found is that he was taking pictures of whiteboards with his cell phone. He was taking pictures of network diagrams. He was going around and had nothing to do with the network. So no cybersecurity tool would ever pick it up. But he was going around and physically collecting information, just what was written on whiteboards. What a great collection op.
Yeah, and it's all out there, right? He's just walking down the hall, writing it on a notepad. Yeah, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's nuts. People are smart.
But if they're staying late or arriving early, that could be an indicator. Another one I would take a look at is, are they asking for things they shouldn't have access to, or they shouldn't have insight to? It's weird, if somebody comes up to you and say they're at the pencil factory and it's the line guy who just pulls the thing to box it, and he goes up to the engineer, he's like, hey, how's this eraser made? And maybe he's just this curious individual, but you compound these other things on it, that's a little bit odd. Why are you asking that question when that's not within your roles and responsibilities?
Absolutely. He has placement, but he doesn't have access. So he's got to expand his access to gain information so he can get paid.
That's right. Yep. Just because he works in the factory may not necessarily mean he has access to the eraser, but maybe he's going to try to. And again, that is an indicator. I would think mood swings to me. If a person is usually cheerful, happy, social within an office, and all of a sudden their mood just kind of changes, that's an indicator. Why? What happened? Are they under pressure? Is something outside forcing them to do something like this? Coercion? There's something's happening there. Mood swings.
100%. They might be under a lot of stress too.
That's right.
We see that a lot whenever spies are leading up to meeting their, for lack of a better word, handler. They're really stressed out. They go have their meeting and then they're calmed down again because they didn't get caught. So really, really telling signs.
You kind of segue into the next one, Ryan. Well done.
So here I am again. See, I'm here for you.
You're just teeing them up for me.
I am. Softballs, baby.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that next one is just that. Foreign contact. Are they meeting individuals? Are they reporting? And if they're not reporting it, that's an indicator. And I would throw foreign contact with foreign travel in there, specifically if they're trying to hide what they're doing. That's a huge indicator to me.
Yeah, 100%, especially if it's on a cadence. Like if it's on a regularly scheduled time frame, it just another one of those things like, hey man, every 3 months I'm down in Mexico City. Oh, really? Okay. Why are you doing that? Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Excuse, excuse, excuse. It just doesn't make sense because who does that? If you're going to travel that frequently, you're going to hop around to different locations. So just something else to lump into all of the other indicators that we have out there.
That's right. That deception to me, if they're trying to deceive a security officer, a CISO, maybe the legal advisor at a corporate company, trying to deceive where they've been or who they're contacting, indicator.
Yeah.
I'll probably throw out maybe one more. Yeah, maybe this ties into the moods and everything, but it could be addictions or it could be debt, something along those lines. But and debt ties to money. We kind of talked about that. But addictions, if they're starting to drink heavily or kind of experiment with drugs, that's an indicator. They're probably trying to escape reality. Probably ties into maybe some of the other ones, but just to annotate one more.
Yeah. People put themselves in a bind. And sometimes they're looking for a way out of this bind, whether it's heavy gambling debts, heavily financial debts, some maybe some character flaws. Maybe it has to deal with their spouse and not being faithful to their spouse, or whatever those things are. And it could be a myriad of things. It could even be less sinister things like, hey, I'm nearing retirement and I've got a child that's getting ready to start Harvard. I've got to pay for this. I've got a sick and elderly mother or a wife that's sick, whatever that bind is. It puts them in a situation where they, have to take immediate action to remedy this thing. And a lot of times, if they have placement and access to certain types of information, they will actually turn to espionage as a way out. And we've seen that from like Aldrich James and others throughout history.
That's right. Looking at it holistically, if you look at a person that you work with, a peer, a supervisor, a subordinate, if something has significantly changed with that individual, it starts there. What is the anomaly? And then more importantly, why? What happened to make them kind of act differently? It could be an indicator for counterintelligence.
So, Jeremy, in the Army, we have a document. It's called TARP, Army Regulation, 381-12, if my memory serves
That's
me
right.
correctly.
Yep.
It's been
Threat
about a
awareness
decade.
reporting program.
Yep, and they lay out all of these items, and so all of the indicators of espionage. But in the defense industrial base, they also have a document that lays out all of these things. And do you know which document that is?
Is that the, oh boy, I'm not going to guess here because I'm probably going to be way off.
It is the C3. And
I
so
was going to
security
say that too.
executive,
Damn it.
yeah, that was it. I knew you had it. It was a security executive agent directive 3. Now, a lot of security professionals out in a defense industrial base will look at that and go, okay, well, this is all tied to personal security clearances and that sort of thing. If you have gambling debts and foreign travel and all that stuff, it could impact your security clearance, which it possibly could. But C3 is designed around all of the indicators of espionage that we just went through. And it's very specific to counterintelligence professionals. Now, on the pure corporate side, no ties to the government. Is there any similar document, Jeremy? That's the trick
That's a
question.
good question. I don't think that there is. Is there?
There is not. No, there is not. But that's okay because companies can mirror that and make those reporting requirements. All they have to do is put it in their code of conducts or their ethics code or develop policy and process to make sure that employees are reporting this type information. So if you have a policy that says, hey, we're going to track and manage and protect our intellectual property by reporting these different things, it's 100% okay. And employees consent to that type of relationship and they come on board and then they have an obligation to report.
That's a great way to protect proprietary information for the corporate entities that have no affiliation with the government. But boy, I know if I have a company out there and my widget is the best widget in the world, and I want to protect that from getting into the hands of a competitor, that's spot on, Ryan. Helping the company develop a policy, and then here's how we're going to protect that particular piece. How often is that done?
I don't know that it's done widespread because there's a fear that having a program like that may negatively impact culture. And we have to bridge that gap. Like you can still have a very great culture, an organizational culture, while also still protecting yourself, your employees, your clients, your intellectual property. And it's a culture of security. It's them, it's us against all. And if you build that type of culture, I don't see where it's ever hampered anything that I've done. It's never hampered any personal relationships I've had within the corporate environment. It's just the way of doing business, and people tend to accept it. Like, yep, that's the smart thing to do. You're protecting me, you're protecting my financial well-being, you're protecting the company, you're protecting my bonus. So all of those things make sense to an employee. Why would they want to come here and work hard every day to have some external organization steal everything that you have? So it's kind of an us against them mentality.
That's awful. I think a big company want to protect at least their information so they can continue to expand their employee base. Well, let me ask you this, Ryan. To use our example of the pencil factory, do you think if that company didn't have an insider threat program, how, as a counterintelligence professional, would you go about that? Would it be everybody? Would it be a certain amount of people? What would that look like?
Well, first I would start with the legal department of the company and say, okay, what is our sensitive data? What do you have people under non-disclosure agreements about? What do you have them under enhanced non-disclosure agreements about? Because the enhanced side is even more detailed than just a generalized non-disclosure agreement. And so by really getting down to the core, like this is it. If we lose this, we're putting ourselves in a bind. And then going over to HR and say, okay, HR, I don't need to know about everybody, but I do need to know the people that have placement and access to this enhanced NDA related information. These are the people that I must protect. And then you set a policy and say, hey, look, if you're going to be read onto this program and you're going to have an enhanced NDA, you're also going to come in contact with our corporate counterintelligence team, who's going to train you and have regular contact with you to make sure that everything is okay, that you're not in a bind. And if you are in a bind, they're the people that you report it to make sure that we work this situation out so that it resolves itself without you giving up our information.
To our audience out there, you just witnessed counterintelligence happening right there. Ryan just put a program together for that pencil factory based on just a policy. And if you're going to work on that eraser, you're going to have enhanced employee screening, and now you're going to have policy to report individuals you may come in contact with. Ryan, you just did the CI thing right there. Well done.
I did. Thank you very much. Hey, all right. Just give me a call and we can work it out. I can make sure that you have the same program.
Boom, love it. To kind of sum up like the indicators of undue affluence, I mean, you're trying to identify that for counterintelligence, and really it goes to money, which we just talked about, ideology on top of that, right? Have they shifted their beliefs? Coercion? Have they started drinking excessively? Are they getting mood swings? Things like that. And ego, you look at Robert Hansen, Alder James, they did it for money. They more or less did it for ego because they thought they were the smartest person in the room. All those things could tie back to, again, looking at what changed about this person and why. Now, there are a lot of indicators out there, but to use the term MICE, money, ideology, coercion, and ego, all the undue affluence can more or less be tied to one of those key indicators of motivation.
For sure. So, Jeremy, we just took a huge deep dive into counterintelligence, and I hate to say it, but I almost forgot about HUMINT for a second there. And the whole episode is about, the difference between counterintelligence and HUMINT. So let me ask you, does HUMINT also worry about mice and undue affluence and CI indicators and all of those different things? And if they do, what perspective do they look at these types of things from?
Yeah, as a counterintelligence is looking for those indicators to identify people who have already infiltrated that organization, I think the HUMINT brethren are using these 4 different motivations to get to that eraser. Is it money the engineer or that researcher is working on with the eraser that's lacking for him? Is it an ideological shift? Hey, I work for this company over here. We're better. Our eraser can be better, but we're going to need your code to make it better. Or is it coercion? Hey, you're going to do it because I'm telling you to do it. I'm going to go take you out back by the dumpster and beat you into oblivion if you don't do it. Or maybe it's ego. I bet you, as a HUMINT collector, he's telling this engineer or scientist on the eraser, I bet you can't get that from me. There's no way you can do that. A little ego down, maybe ego up. You're the smartest person in the room. And boy, you could really help the world at large. And we see this in the scientific community. You'd really be able to help the community at large if everybody could have access to this eraser. But they're more offensively using it to steal information to me or to extract and gather information.
That's 100%. I mean, so it's we kind of use the same term. So I think that leads to the confusion that you're CI HUMINT guys. You all use the same stuff, but it's for totally different purposes.
That's right.
And I also think that HUMINT guys try to play down the indicators so that they're protecting their source. Like, hey, I'm going to give you this truckload of money, but tomorrow doesn't mean you can go buy a yacht and a Lamborghini and all of those things.
That's
You're going
right.
to have to until this thing is over, and then you can have all of that stuff. So I mean, they understand, but it's all about protecting the source, protecting the op, where we try to use those same terms and concepts to protect all the time. And so it's two
That's right.
different sides of the coin.
I think HUMINT doesn't like counterintelligence because we're the guys looking through their case file questioning, are you sure about this guy? Are you sure about this girl? Have you thought about this? And the egos of HUMINT collectors can't be left at the door. They're defending their op. And I'm concerned
Yeah,
about that sometimes.
I do too. And I almost hate that it's a counterintelligence role, to be honest with you. Because I've seen some CI reference, and it's almost as if they're the OPSEC police. That you can't do these certain things because you've done them in the past. But I know it's a counterintelligence person doing it because they're looking at it through the other lens, and so you got to have
think
it
differently. That's right.
We do think differently.
I think as a counterintelligence professional, helping a HUMINT collector out there is we help them recognize, hey, you just gave him a bunch of money. How is he going to explain that away? Or you're meeting him in the public. How is he going to explain your relationship if asked by an outsider? How do you protect yourself and that individual out there? Really helping in complementing each other. And then trying to figure out, is this a controlled thing on the HUMINT side where CI says there's a lot of indicators out here? Take a look to make sure you're not being duped.
Yeah. There's a relationship for sure. And I'll give you an easy corporate relationship. And so I was at a company one time, and every Friday afternoon, we would all leave the office building and we would all go to the same watering hole, if you know what I mean. We would have an adult beverage. And everybody in town knew it. And that was the place. It was our bar at the end of the day on Friday to close out the week. We would all be there. Well, the bad guys knew it too. And so if they wanted to come and rub shoulders with people that had placement and access to information inside the building, they would show up at that watering hole. Well, I knew it too as a counterintelligence professional that everybody did that. So I would go there and sit on the sidelines and just watch the crowd, who they were mingling with. And it was where HUMINT and counterintelligence came in contact, looking at the same body of people. It was so much fun
that's fun.
And it was all corporate. It wasn't nation state stuff, but that's where the magic happens, and you'd have vendors there, you'd have competitors there, and you would have our people there, and they're all mingling together. And I was like, God, this is what it looks like in real time.
That's right. That reminds me of something you told me when we were over the campfire a couple of weeks ago, chowing down to those crawdads. I think you were talking about executive protection and companies out there just being conditioned to use the same place, the same month, the same floor, the same conference room, the same hotel year after year. When you do that kind of consistent means of being lazy, I call it, you give the adversary, you give a HUMINT professional the opportunity to identify that trend so they could be sitting in the lobby and all of a sudden you have a new best friend.
Yep. Or you see this new pot plant in the corner that has a brand new camera.
That's right.
That you can see.
That's right. We haven't even talked technical means. You're absolutely right.
You're right. I mean, you don't have to be there in person anymore. You can sit on the outside and just wait for people to pile out. and leave a device behind. So we've seen it all. Collection happens all the time, and it comes in many different forms and fashions. But you're right. You do that pattern, whether it's a boardroom meeting, whether it's a leadership offsite, or if it's the Friday afternoon watering hole. When you set that pattern and everybody knows about it, you become an easy target.
Right. Absolutely. Ryan, I know we're coming up on time. Can I leave you with this last thought as we kind of close this out?
Oh, please do. I want to think about it all weekend.
No, you're not. I think about there's a safe in a room, right? There's this safe, it's got a bunch of secrets in it. As a counterintelligence professional, it is my responsibility to make sure that safe stays secure. And those secrets in that safe are in the hands, or the proprietary information is in the hands of people that should have it. Conversely, as a HUMINT collector, I want to steal what's inside that safe. And I'm going to try to engage everybody that has placement and access to that safe to steal those secrets. I use that analogy quite often when I was there in my mid to latter career, saying that safe is the example. Counterintelligence protects the safe. Human intelligence tries to rip off what's in the safe.
I think it's a great analogy. So please, 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 if you're in the community, shy away from the CI HUMINT piece.
Please.
Please, please, please. There's two totally different disciplines. They can learn from each other, just like counterintelligence can learn from SIGINT, HUMINT, cyber, all the other security platforms. But it is not CI HUMINT. We do not do the same thing.
That's right. I wish there was like this big pause. CI and pause, wait for it, HUMINT.
I love it. I love it. But they never do. It's always the same. So if you're a junior practitioner, if you're a commander or a leader of a counterintelligence team, and you also have wait for it, HUMINT, they're not. So just word to the wise, treat them differently, understand their purposes, train them effectively, and let them go do their missions. It's totally different, but we have to have both of them.
That's right. And Ryan, we just spent about an hour talking about counterintelligence related to the human intelligence field. Boy, we should probably talk about those other disciplines and how counterintelligence plays factor to those in a future episode. What do you think?
Yeah, it's tricky because I think there's some that we have to leave out. I don't know if we could talk
Yes.
CI SIGINT. I
Mhm.
don't know, but we could probably talk about CI HUMINT. I've
Yeah.
I've done some of that before. There's some interesting aspects of that. Put the thing under a shed.
That's
You
right.
just get counter HUMINT.
That's
But
right.
so I think there's some things that we could talk about with the other disciplines. CI cyber, I think, would be kind of fun. So yeah, I agree with you. We just nailed CI HUMINT, but there's a lot
We
more
did.
to it.
There
CI
is.
and
Yeah.
pause HUMINT. Sorry.
One last bumper sticker. Humans, what can I learn? What can I learn about the adversary, whether it's a corporate entity or whether it's another foreign nation? Counterintelligence, what's being hidden? What do I need to protect? Who's already inside the wire? And how did the information get leaked? Ryan, this has been fun.
It has been fun. I hope we didn't create more confusion than we had before we got into this episode.
I hope so.
I cannot wait for the professional humaners to start chiming in, because there's some great ones out there.
Yeah,
And
no doubt.
I can't wait for them to beat us counterintelligence professionals up. They're probably going to laugh at us. Now, I will say, as a parting shot, that counterintelligence is chess, HUMINT is checkers.
Oh boy, here come the floodgates. Now you've just done it.
But one thing I will say about HUMINT or so, and I have to give it to them, because if we take a look at it from a risk base, their risk is way higher, way higher than our risk as counterintelligence professionals. We're typically inside the wire. Now, we may go outside the wire to do certain things, but their job is always outside the wire. And so their risk profile is way significantly more than us. So I laugh and jokingly say CI is chess and HUMINT is checkers. It's true. But I also understand that they play a lot of chess in their game too. So I have to show them some love.
Fair enough. I love it. Recognize, react, report. I love that too. I learned something today. Thank you, Ryan.
You're very welcome. Somebody threw an R4 out to me the other day, and I can't remember what that R4 stood for, but R3 is great. If we could just get that, I think we're winning.
I think so. Just remember, when we're doing that reacting wise, don't be a CI indicator out there. I'll get back to you in a week. I'll get back to you in a month, because you know what the human collector's thinking? You could just do that now, or you could do that tomorrow. But now it's an indicator of control. Anyways, that's a whole different episode and a discussion for another time. I love it.
Absolutely.
R3.
R3. Maybe we'll just do an episode on R3. That'd be fun.
I like that. That would be fun.
All right, Jeremy. Well, great discussion, man. I hope our audience gets something out of this. I hope they enjoyed it. I can't wait to take some of the arrows that are going to be shot in our direction, but that's okay. That's how we learn. That's how we grow, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for giving us a listen, guys out there, girls out there. If you want us to talk about anything in particular, or you disagree with anything we said or agree, let's get you on board. Let's talk about it, or shoot us a note. We'd love to bring it up in a discussion. Check out our website, www.ixsolutions.com. Give us a like, follow us. Ryan, it was fantastic as always. And over to you, brother.
Yeah, fantastic. Great times, Jeremy. And I can't wait for the next one. Talk to you later.